Hey, this is Mark with Comics, Beer, and Sci-Fi. I'm here with a special guest. It's Mike DeSantis. You all might know him. He's the promoter and showrunner of the Great Lakes Comic Con and Expo shows here in southeastern Michigan. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm dreading going outside right now with this snowstorm. But let's
Yeah.
let's talk about how you got into this whole big comic book collecting hobby and how it's evolved.
Well, the hobby, I mean, I was probably younger than I can remember. You know what I mean? I remember trying to read with a Spider-Man comic book. So it's something where I've always been into comic books, always been into the cartoons and all that stuff. I didn't start officially collecting like with a membership, from an LCS or something until I was almost old enough to drive. I was 15 years old. My buddy had his front-end license, and then as I turned 16, I got mine. So, and I'm 51 now. So I've been with a membership at an LCS since I was 15 years old. Now that has shifted over the years because the original place isn't there anymore, et cetera. But oh yeah, I've had a pull list for a very long time. So I guess just always been into comic books. It got to the point, it's probably a similar story with maybe a lot of people. Once I got married, it was basically like some of this has to go. It can't all stay here. I had a 2-bedroom condo when we had gotten married and my wife moved in. The master bedroom, which is the bigger of the two, was where the collection was. And then, of course, the bedroom was the smaller. And I was informed that we can't do that either. So we had to switch that up. And I had to start selling. So that was 97, 98, so late 90s. Started selling on eBay. I've sold on Yahoo auctions. That's how old I am. But there's, different things that were available before eBay really took off, and just started doing really well with the sales, and ended up accumulating more stuff, which of course wasn't the plan, to where the inventory got bigger than the collection. So anyway, by 2010, I did start setting up at shows once in a while here and there, different shows in the area. But then around 2010, the decision was, let's try and do our own comic show. And my wife's father is a Vietnam vet. And at the time, the VFW Hall, which is no longer there, but it was on Frazo or near Frazo, Gratiot, south of Frazo in Roseville was where we started doing the shows. And that's gone now. I don't know. I think it's a car dealership or something, but the show just kind of growing from there, and just kind of got the bug to do it. And we just kept doing it. Eventually, I'm not sure when we first started hooking up with you guys and seeing you guys at the shows, but we eventually moved to MCC, as you know. And so now we're doing 4 shows a year. We do the big one in MCC. We call it the Comic Con. And the 3 smaller ones we call expos. So we got the Great Lakes Comic Expos 3 times a year. Just, small local comic book shows. And then we do the big one in February where we bring in the guests. And it has evolved over the years. I mean, in lots of different ways. I mean, we don't even bring guests to the expos anymore. We just kind of reserve those all for the Comic Con. It just seems to make more sense. So the expos really just have become just collector shows. So yeah, a long-winded response, but that's kind of, how things all kind of melded out over the years.
Okay, now that you're sort of an old pro at this Comic Con thing, what were the challenges starting out with the big show, getting the guests and just organizing the whole thing?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, it's still a challenge now with the bigger guests, because you just have to 2 big things. And of course, I joke about this because we all know it kind of happens, especially with today. Not many people want to come to Michigan in February, and I'm sure that makes sense. I've had, some even tell me, hey, if it's a February show, I'm going to Orlando or somewhere else. And my response is usually, yeah, I would, I think I'll do that too, but that's always been the big challenge. Not only just kind of convincing people that it's a worthwhile endeavor for them, but it's just the calendar of the show, where it falls every year. But we've been fortunate, and I hope I'm not jinxing it now. I mean, we've had snow on occasion, but nothing that's been, detrimental to the show. So the biggest thing is just, at first, making people aware of who we were. I mean, the first really big guest we had was Chris Claremont back in 2014, Jim Steranko shortly thereafter, Ron Mars, some others, Daryl Banks. But it was more just, hey, here's who we are. And they had no clue what we were, but convincing them to come. And it worked out. And now, I mean, there's still some of that now. Like I said, it's still a challenge with the calendar dates, which I'm fine where they are. I mean, there's really no other shows around our time. And just convincing them that it's, worthwhile. And now some of them, they know who we are, I mean, I'll talk to people at a show. Hey, it's Great Lakes Comic Con. And they're like, oh, I heard about that show. And then I'm surprised. I'm like, really? But, yeah, it's just kind of, over the years, people are talking about it now more than they have. So, yeah.
Now you got a good dynamic of vendors at these shows. You have a lot of comic book dealers and you got toy dealers. Do you have to like structure all that when you're setting up the show with the vendors? Like you don't want to have too many toy dealers, you don't want to have too many comic book dealers. You have to have an equal balance to that.
There is to some extent, to some extent. I mean, what I try to do with it, because of course there's other shows out there, and for years and from the start, pretty much, I didn't want this show to be the same as everybody else's. You know, I mean, well, what would make someone come to Great Lakes as opposed to somewhere else? And the decision we've been making over the years, and more so since a little bit pre-pandemic, but now is we're a comic book and toy show. It's something where, I mean, yes, pop culture is wonderful, and we do have pop culture stuff. But you'll notice with our guest list the last couple of years, it's been people from the comic book industry. We've had some media guests, but they're related directly to the comic book industry or toy industry. That's my argument for the wrestlers we have. They have wrestling toys, and we've got a nice little niche with the wrestlers we bring in. So when you say, how do we do vet, dealers. We do this a vetted system. It's a juried system. And, but we do focus on comic books and toys. So there have been people who've applied, and it doesn't quite, at least I feel, fit for the show. So we, say, no, we don't have room for you. But once we have our group of who we have, and we have a pretty tight group we've had over several years now, some regular dealers, we do, yes, absolutely, kind of make a decision on, who goes where and how many of each and this and that. I mean, you don't want, I mean, I don't know if this is the joke with it, but I hear even other promoters say stuff like this. You don't want 50% Pops dealers on your floor. Pops are wonderful, of course, but you walk in the room and everybody's got Pops. It makes it difficult,
I've seen it.
for the dealers. Yeah, I mean, we've been to shows like that, but it's that kind of thing. Whereas comic books is different. You have a bunch of comic book dealers. They all have different things, some Silver Age, some gold, some modern, some stuff that's just hard to find. So it works pretty well, I think. And it has for the show. It really has.
Okay, for the last few years, we've had some challenges with the COVID-19 issue. How has that affected how you run your show today and for the future?
Well, of course. I mean, we were shut down like everybody else was. The weird thing was for us, though, before the shutdown occurred, our show happened, gosh, I think it was like maybe 2 weeks before the shutdown back in 2020. Because I remember, because after our show, I think I went to C2E2 the weekend after. And that was weird because, you know how it was then. Like, we weren't sure, like, should I wear a mask? Should I not? What's going on? And of course, we were shut down. When we came back then, finally, which would have been February this past year, the college was still under a mask mandate. I don't know if you recall that or not. People were just starting to shed the masks as far as the policies went. I don't know if every person decided to, but and that, I think, was challenging for us. I had invested in lots of antibacterial, spray and masks and all this stuff, because we were told we had to have masks at the show. And then I think it was that weekend the college decided to move away from that rule too. So as far as challenge goes, pre-pandemic numbers at the shows, we still haven't gotten back to that level yet. So our show numbers back in 2019, 2020, because again, February 2020, before people actually started responding to the pandemic, we had a very solid show that year too. It was our 10-year anniversary, if you remember. We had Jim Starlin there, Starenko, had a great turnout. But then, since then, I mean, not that it's, overly, I guess, negative in any way, but the numbers still haven't gotten up as far as they were pre-pandemic. And of course, it's only been one show, right? Last year in 2022. And I kind of feel the mask mandate may have done something with that, because some people probably just said, we're not going for the masks are being worn. But others may have said they were going because of the masks. You don't know. So as far as going forward, I guess, to come back to your question, it is a struggle. It is something that, I mean, of course, we're all living with it now. We're all very conscious of it. But I'm just anticipating and hopeful the numbers get back up to what they were pre-pandemic. And I'm confident it'll happen. I mean, as with dealers, we have more dealers at this show. I mean, this too. I usually have my 2 spots. I set up with my stuff. I gave my spots up this year. We had such a demand for dealers coming in that I figured, okay, I'll make room for others, that kind of thing. So we actually have more dealers now than we ever had coming into the show.
So do you see yourself like with this hobby kind of growing, or do you feel it's more like it's slowing down a little bit? Because with the latest offerings on, like, with the media shows, the movies, I haven't been too impressed for the last few years of what they've put out. Not like they did, during that phase 4 of, what was it, phase 3 of Marvel, movies. I mean, that was just a great period. And it just seemed like the whole, like, comic book industry started booming right around that. Then we hit the pandemic, and then it seems like everything was big, and then it's starting to slow down a little bit. Now, obviously, those things go up and down. They
Right. Sure.
so. But do you see your show growing in the future to the point where you'd have to move out of there, get a bigger venue?
Well, first of all, yes. I mean, the show, of course, let's keep it growing. We're prepared for it, and we plan for that growth. The facility we're in, though, we only use 75% of that floor space. It's something where, and again, I guess, people watching this, if you come to the show, when you walk in, we turn right away, and everything to the left is all blocked off. We're still not at full space usage of that venue. The first show we had back there in 2014, the Claremont show, Chris Claremont was there. We're using 50% of the venue. So then over time, we just kind of start, it's basically, and I don't know if people have noticed this, but as you walk in, that left wall is literally a wall of bleachers.
I noticed.
The stage pull on there. So that wall of bleachers has been moving over little by little every year. It's just maybe not perceptible unless you're down there with a tape measure really paying attention. And something else, I guess, when you say how have we responded to the pandemic, we went from 8-foot aisles to 10-foot aisles. We're at 12-foot aisles this year. So, I mean, trying to make it, of course, more distancing, even though, I'm not sure how to say this, but we're not as responsive to the pandemic as we were. We kind of pretend that it's over, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but people are still getting sick. So in that respect, we still respond. We're keeping those rows longer. But yeah, we still have about 25% of that venue space to expand to. And I've considered it, but, just like I've considered, we're on a Friday and a Saturday. Should we also do a Sunday? I mean, these are all things we talk about every single year. But to me, the first thing that has to happen, it's almost like we have to be exploding at the seams, like with attendance is what I'm thinking, before I want to adjust it. Because to me, it doesn't make sense to add a third day and then attendance stays the same, or perhaps it may, or expand that floor plan and bring in, 50 more dealers and the attendance is the same and all the dealers are fighting for the same dollar. I mean, it's that kind of like business decisions that I'm very conscious of them. We're always aware of them. I mean, even last year in 2022, we had our, staff meeting. I know I run the show. It's, my wife and I run it and everything, but we do have a staff, mostly family. But we have, planning meetings where it's like, should we expand this show? Should we not? And it's always just very conservative approach. It's working fine the way it is. Let's wait and see how it goes. So sure, there's room for growth. There's room for expansion. Finding another venue. I don't know. I mean, what other venues are there? And it's a wonderful venue. I mean, the only negative to it, and by the way, I try to be a very positive guy, but here's the negative, is there aren't many hotels near it. It's not like, a suburban showplace where the hotel's right there, or if you're downtown at the Ren Center, of course, the hotel's right there. That's the downside, is that wherever you stay for a hotel, and even for our guests, we're kind of trucking them in back and forth before the show, back, this kind of stuff. That's a pretty big challenge, but we've made that work as well. But I couldn't think of any other venue, really, at least in Macomb County, that can fit what it is that we do.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, Mike is a teacher, and I know you use a lot of some of the students as volunteers. Are you still using that practice?
I don't use them. Come on. Actually, no, it's kind of cool. A lot of them know.
You give them the privilege to
There you go.
have for free. It's
To credit.
if they do a little volunteering.
No, actually, we pay them, and I do it. I pay them well.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. We don't use any volunteers at all. It's kind of interesting. I actually had a message literally yesterday on our Facebook group. Somebody says, hey, I help out. I volunteer at Motor City, volunteer here, C2E2. I want to volunteer for you. And it's like, I appreciate that, but we don't use volunteers, and I'm covered every year between family and then, yes, my students. So, I'm a high school teacher. So, snow day today. It was wonderful. Yeah, to go out and shovel, but I had a snow day today. Hoping for one tomorrow. Love my job. Don't get me wrong. I'm a dedicated public servant, but sometimes it's, nice to have a day here and there. But the students that come into my room, I mean, I've been teaching 27 years, been doing the show, as you know, since 2010. So there's kind of the culture of, or what's the word I'm looking for? Kids just know when they come into my class that I run a Comic-Con. And some of them they approach me like, can I help this year? Because the kids are into this stuff too. And I joked when he said, use my students. But the thing is, they want to do this. And what I mean by that is almost like when you try to get young people into reading comic books, collecting comic books. I mean, I think you and I are pretty close in age here. I mean, we need younger people into this whole, genre, into this whole game. Otherwise, it's going to go away, and I think about this with, maybe not golden age superhero stuff, but I think of like, the Westerns and stuff, right? The stuff that was big in the 50s. And I know there's still collectors out with that, but there aren't a lot of them. You know what I mean? Like as people get older and they're no longer with us, I mean, the interest just isn't there. Now, will that ever happen to Spider-Man and Batman? I mean, who knows? I mean, you mentioned the movies and stuff a few minutes ago. I think the movies have pretty well solidified that, in the culture, that I'm sure they're going to be around for a while. But it's good to get the younger people in. And yes, I do pay them. And I actually even do like a profit sharing with them. If the show does well, I give them money. I'm also a union guy. I'm a labor guy. I'm actually the union rep for my building. I'm going to pay people who are working. And so last year I had two students who gave me a lecture that I told them I would. And good for them. They came to me in class. They're like, I think you paid me wrong. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, it's a lot more than we agreed. Oh, just keep it and spend it. I said, the show did well. It's my way of saying thank you. But now they told their friends, and now the friends and them want to come back and help again. I mean, it's all very positive, in that respect.
That's what I thought. That's what I brought it up. I didn't mean to say you were like taking advantage of them or
Right.
I know they would be chomping at the bit to help out. I know that.
Right. No, and I was teasing you about that too. But no, actually, yeah, we don't have volunteers. And one more thing too, because I can't stop talking. We've actually had positive comments from attendees who've said to us, like, they'll go to other shows and ask a volunteer something. The volunteer's like, I don't know, or can't help or whatever. And there's been a lot of praise that when they talk to people on our show floor or whatever, people know what they're doing. Because, anyway, just kind of throwing that out there too. So
anyways, like getting back to your guests, the media guests, who have been some of the most delightful guests that you've had at your shows?
I have to say all of them, don't I? I'm on camera. I'm being recorded. Every one of them was one.
It's got to be a standout.
Yeah, this guy named Mark Myers. Oh my gosh, when he comes in, it's just crazy.
I heard he's a jerk though.
Yeah. I didn't say that. Where'd you hear that from? No, really though. No, I mean, they've all been great. Seriously. I mean, some a little more, a little more needy sometimes than others, that kind of thing happens. But I guess you expect that. I mean, if I were a bigwig in the industry, I mean, I would expect the royal treatment myself, but it's also something where, and as I said, they've all been wonderful. The media and the comic guests too. But I mean, something where you've got someone like Jim Shooter, let's say, who's been to multiple shows of ours. Jim Steranko. I mean, that says something. I mean, Shooter pulled me to the side last year after the show. We were talking, and he said, and I'm praising myself on this, but it was just I was starstruck because it's Jim Shooter and awestruck with what he said. He says, what? He goes, I've been to a lot of conventions in my career. This one, the top 2 or 3 I've ever been into in my entire career. And he was referring to the way we treated him. From, pick up from the airport, traveling around, this, the dinners we have for the guests, which you guys aren't aware of, but we do stuff with the guests when they're with us. And it was great. I was like, thank you. I mean, what am I supposed to say other than, can you write me a recommendation of some kind, or I don't know, hire me to write a comic book? I'm joking about that. Well, the guests have been great though. My personal favorites, just from like a geek standpoint or a nerd standpoint, was when we had the Greatest American Hero in, William Catt, back in 2018. That was just a personal favorite for me. I was just like, when he was coming, I was fanboy starstruck. The other one was Nicholas Hammond, who played Spider-Man back in the 70s. As I said, I'm an old guy. I'm 51, going to be 52 this year. I remember watching that stuff on TV all the time in the 70s, and so that was one of the first Spider-Man for me anyway.
I always loved the reverse web slinger effect that they did.
Yeah.
Everything was in reverse.
I know, as well, the special effects at the time, or when he's climbing up the wall and his hands like sliding as it does it. It's just kind of
you tell he's on a wire.
Yeah.
And that was great. Great for back then, though. It's all we had. Yeah.
Well, they needed him in that last Spider-Man movie, right? They brought back Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield. You couldn't give a nod to Nicholas Hammond. Come on, that doesn't. But
I was just.
But anyway, yeah.
Well, who's on your wish list of people that you would like to have at your show?
Well, and that's actually a good point too, because that's always been kind of my thing, is like the bucket list. You know what I mean? Of course, people that the customers would respond well to, but who is it I would like to meet? I would like to spend time with, and I hate to admit it, but I've almost hit it all. Walt Simonson's probably up near the top, and Louise. I've been in contact with them. We just haven't been able to get things working out. Again, February, snow, Michigan, but in other reasons too. But it's probably just, I think of the high tide when I first got into it and got really excited about it. Like the Todd McFarlane stuff. Angel Medina, has reached out to Todd several times. Well, hey, come to the show, and Todd's interested, but just can't make it work. Honestly, I probably couldn't afford him if he wanted to come, but hey, you know what? I'd remortgage the house if he was interested. I don't know if my wife heard that. She's upstairs. But we'll keep that just between us.
But then you have to raise the price of admission if Todd
A little bit, right?
I will.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even like Tom Orzechowski, who comes, and he's coming this February. I have a great relationship with him, and he's personal friends with Todd as well. He's, led her all those Spawn issues. And he says, every time I'm with Todd somewhere and conventions, he's like, I always talk about your show, and Todd's aware of it. But again, just schedule, and with the movie and stuff that they're working on, I mean, his schedule's not open. But in terms of who I would like to see, I mean, Simonson's would be wonderful. McFarlane, just I think of that, late 80s, early 90s crew, that I was, and you as well, if you're collecting at the time, just
Jim Lee.
So yeah, Jim Lee, exactly. Arthur Adams. I mean, I know they're all more natives, but can't think of them right now. Which one is that?
Liefeld.
Liefeld?
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, but again, it just comes down to, like I said, I mean, price is a big one. I mean, for any household decision, money's a big issue. And it's the things you mentioned, raising the price. I mean, that is something we try not to do. I mean, we're at a $20 admission right now. And, even 5 years ago, if we would have talked, I would have told you I would never be at 20. No way, no way, no way. I'm trying to keep this as affordable as I can. But the reality is, I mean, especially since pandemic, I mean, oh my gosh, our costs have, flights, hotel, food, venue, all that stuff. It's gone up 30% since 2019, or 2020, actually. So, you can't sustain that without raising prices somewhere, So yeah, so we're at 20. So, yeah, bringing in someone bigger than that, I guess they would have to hike the prices. But we'll see. We'll see. It might be a good problem to have or something to concern ourselves if that day ever comes. Who knows?
You got the show coming up February 24th.
Yep.
The date
24, 25. Yep.
24th, 25th. What do you have for raffle? You're going to be raffling off. Do you already have that already planned out?
The one thing I've got like stuff sitting all around me here because I was preparing for, this discussion. The one thing I didn't pull out were those prizes. Okay. So I was going to show them on the camera here. But Friday night.
We can insert that later if you.
And you'll just put it on the screen as I'm talking. That's great. That's great. So Mike Royer is coming, which that's actually another, I should have mentioned him. I mean, Mike Royer was Jack Kirby's inker. So, of course, Jack Kirby's been gone for 3 decades now. But Mike Royer was the one who inked all that stuff Kirby was doing at DC, whether it was Devil Dinosaur, The Demon, Commandy, all that stuff, Eternals for Marvel. So I used that to kind of give me an idea for what kind of prizes to give away. So the Friday night prize is The Demon #1, all high-grade copies. And then we've got Commandy #1, which I know that one's maybe not as high demand as The Demon, but it's still a cool comic book to know and have. And Mike Royer inked each of those. With our celebrities coming from the Star Wars, Disney Plus universe, if you will, we've got Dorian Kingi, who played Cad Bane on Book of Boba Fett, and several other things. He was in Stranger Things. He played, Venom and some of the animated stuff for the movie, not cartoon, but for the CG stuff for the movie. And then we've got Barry Lowen, who played the Mandalorian in, I think, 5, 6, 7 episodes or something of the Mandalorian. So we've got those comic books. We've got Mandalorian #1. We've got a Cad Bane cover from Star Wars Insider. Keith Daggett, if you know who he is, runs Daggett's Comics. He donated those to the show. He's a really good guy. So we've got those to give away. And that's Friday. So Saturday then, we have Dan DiDio coming, who formerly DC Comics Spain, but now he's involved with Frank Miller and Frank Miller Presents. And so I have Daredevil, the first Elektra, which I know is not Frank Miller Presents, nor is it Dan DiDio, but it's Miller. So as I said, the guests that we bring in just kind of makes the path to what the prizes are going to be. So yeah, Daredevil, the first appearance of Elektra, 168, again, high grade. I mean, that coming here for years, that's one thing I do pride myself. One of the many things I pride myself on with this show is that we have some really cool prizes. You just got to pay admission and you got to stick around. I mean, that's kind of the catch. Got to stay in the room until we do the prize raffle, or if you're going to leave, just make sure you come back for the prize raffle. You have to be present to win. But am I missing one? I'm trying to think if I have another one on Saturday. What was it? I'm drawing a blank. And we're doing the Mandalorian and Cad Bane stuff also on Saturday because we had so many copies donated by Daggett's Comics. This is going to bother me now that there's another, Batman 635. How could I forget? We have Tom Nguyen coming, who's an inker, and he inked that first appearance of the Red Hood. And so that's going to be a Saturday prize too. So you can get the first Red Hood and the first Elektra, or you can't win both. Yeah, that's for Saturday. So again, hundreds of dollars of prizes available. We are doing the door prize at 3:00 this year on Saturday instead of 5. And the reason for that is, again, cut me off if you want me to, otherwise I'll keep on talking forever.
Keep talking.
But we're making things electronic now. And for any of you who've been to our show, watching this, and you've been to the show regularly, when you come in, we give you a slip of paper and you fill it out and we draw names. Well, answering the question from earlier about response to health, safety, pandemic, etc., you start thinking about lots of people touching the same pen, lots of people touching pieces of paper, and then there's a staff member who's usually me rifling through and mixing up all the pieces of paper and pulling a prize. Thinking that's probably not a good idea anymore. So we've eliminated the paper, which also helps with the budget. Like I said, we're trying not to keep raising prices. And so we're going to do it electronically. So what we're doing, and I was actually working on that today, trying to enjoy my snow day, right? Graded some papers, got caught up on school stuff, and then started working on stuff for the show. But we have a bunch of QR codes that are on placards. So when you walk in, you have your smartphone, hopefully. I think everybody has one. Just go up to the placard, hold your phone up. Here's mine. Get that picture, and you fill things out electronically. And so what'll happen is that's your prize draw. And then we're going to do it at 3:00 in the afternoon. We'll do the draw. And all I'm going to do is, there's lots of websites out there, but I use one of these. It's just a random line picker. So we've got a database that you're entering your information into. I dump that database into this random line picker, then boom, I start picking names. And so the idea is that when you fill out the electronic form, you put in your cell number, and I'll just text you and say, you're the winner. So we're not going to do the whole show at the end where everyone's sitting at the bleachers and I'm pulling 30 names out of the box because people have left earlier. They don't hear the name. And yeah, so we're trying to get better at that too. Because the other option would be just to eliminate the prizes. And I don't want to do that. I think that's the one thing, again, like I said earlier, I'm always trying to do something that other shows are not doing. Why would you come to Great Lakes Comic Con when you can go to another show here, another one there? And I think people do come for the guests that we have. Again, comic book industry directly, that kind of stuff, and comic book related or wrestling related, or the prizes, or the awesome vendors, or maybe because Comic Experience Sci-fi is there. I mean, something that'll draw them in is the idea. So, and as far as the door prizes go, I'm going to begin that on social media in the next couple of weeks too, so people know that the rules are a little different for this show. And hopefully people can understand and cooperate with that. So,
yep. Now, speaking of prizes, you're still doing the cosplay contest, obviously.
Yep.
All right, because that's one of the big draws for a lot of people to come to these shows. They get to dress up as their favorite characters. Now,
Sure.
what's the prizes for the cosplay?
Well, we have, and I say cash prizes, but I'll do air finger quotes for cash prizes. We call them Comic-Con dollars. And so, so $225 in prizes total for the kids and the adults. And we basically give you money you can only spend at the show. So if you win first place, you win $100. You get these little coupons from us that you spend at the show. So, and that is to help the dealers. I mean, if I were to give just an actual cash prize, I mean, who's to say they might, go somewhere else and spend it?
Yeah. You want to keep it in-house.
Keep it in-house. So, and that's why we do it that way too. So, yes, costume contest. We actually have a few cosplay guests coming to the show this time around as well. The League of Enchantment will be helping out with judging, and they will be present at the show. We have Disfusional Studios, and she's helping with, she'll be at the show at the table, but helping with judging on Saturday. And then Ray Gray Cosplay will be there as well. And they've been at the show before. These are friends of ours, people we know, who are helping out as well. But yeah, you're right. Costumes, huge part of it. It's almost like, I wish we could even do something on Friday night as well, but there just isn't enough time because we've had the cosplayers on Friday as well, but the contests are all on Saturday. Yeah.
Oh, so what are your hours on Friday?
5 to 9. 5 to 9.
And then what Saturdays?
Because I'm still a working stiff, so I got to work and then I go to the Comic-Con afterwards. Sometime I'll retire and maybe those hours will change. But Saturday is 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. So you have Friday night, 5 to 9, Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Good. All right, Mike. I appreciate you talking to us.
Sure.
Again, folks, make sure you make it out to the Great Lakes Comic Con on February 24th and 25th. Again, this is Mark with Comic Experience Sci-Fi with Mike DeSantis. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.